You're absolutely right. When you look at that, you say, well, actually, we accumulated forks along the way.
They labelled this phenomenon fork resurrection.
Indeed, the forks did disappear, but then they seem to come back.
So the big question is, where are they going? What's going on here?
Yeah, and look, the solution to this would be a higher powered study with location-grade Wi-Fi around the hospital. It's not going to be cheap to run. In fact, the RFID equipment probably costs more than a year or two supply worth of forks. So we haven't really contemplated going down the line of conducting a research.
The fact that you know that, I think, already tells me that you did go down the path already.
Well, we thought about it.
Well, why do they disappear? I would immediately see it as a gender issue. I just think it's an inadvertent thing that these forks... And I think it's to do with them not wanting to wash up. That's what it's about, I think. I reckon it's entitled sons who have gone in there and just taken the fork and gone off and not even remembered to bring it back.
Men?
Men.
White men specifically, or just men?
Oh, I reckon probably all men.
Younger men or older men?
I would like to think that younger men were better. I'm not sure, though.
Do you think that I would be in a demographic of somebody who would take a fork and not bring it back?
Yes. From your demographic, probably yes. But now that I know you're such a interesting and community-minded person, I think probably you might remember to bring your fork back.
Meredith was wrong. I was the exact person who took forks home in my Tupperware container because I was too lazy or too busy or some other reason. It'd end up in circulation at home until my wife would get upset because our drawer was overflowing with so many mismatching forks. Periodically, I'd sneak a batch back to work and the vicious cycle would begin again. At the start of this year, after 12 years, I left that particular job and I moved to the commercial sector, and I was shocked to see they didn't have a fork problem there. They had an abundance of utensils. My theory is because they pay someone to unpack the dishwasher. Anyway, 6 months had passed, and I was curious to see what was going on in the drawers of my old workplace. So I rang my friend and former colleague, Timothy. He sits near the kitchen.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm here on the phone in good old level 4.
Okay.
Where the desks are unclean and the forks are minimal. What can I do for you?
I want you to walk to the kitchen right now.
Oh, God. Yeah. I'm here.
Can you open the drawer for me?
Oh,
What do you see? What do you see?
I see a serious quantity of forks.
Really?
Serious.
How many?
Yes, I do.
How many?
Let's say there's a prediction. 1, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
What?
Like 13 to 14.
Wow.
We have forks, Geraldine. Everything's going to be okay.
I realise now my old work didn't have a fork problem. It had a me problem. An entitled son who took forks and then brought them back. Maybe resurrecting forks is some sort of God complex. I'm not sure. All I know is I hope Dr. Meredith Bergman and I can stay friends.
You can sort of solve a fork problem. I actually carry something a bit akin to a fork in my handbag.
Can we have a look at it? What is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That. If they didn't have a fork in my tea room, I would just carry a plastic fork with me.
What would you call that? What is that?
It's an avocado scoop, I think. But I didn't buy it. I picked it up from somewhere.
Who Gives a Fork was made for us by the documentary maker Mike Williams. This is the exact amount of effort that I want poured in to small-scale mysteries. My dream for humanity would be academic levels of rigor and investigation into very, very small questions, conundrums, and preoccupations. In that vein, if you're a long-term listener of Shortcuts, you'll be very excited to know that a VHS copy of Hellraiser has been returned to the bus stop in Old Kent Road after several years of absence. By whom, we do not know. Why, we cannot say. I mean, what is our time on Earth, if not a little bit, for mucking around?
Okay.
No, let's just...
Now put it there so it's in between you and Jessie. I'll just sing loudly. Of all the money that e'er I spent. Ben! Okay, I'm ready.
Jessie, are you a professional or are you not a professional?
No, we're ready. We don't need to do this. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
God.
No, I'm really... Okay.
I have had it up to here with both of you. I think maybe we've got to stop. Can we stop?
Okay, wait. Let's just have a pause there. Or do you think we're ready? I'm ready. Okay. Of all the money that e'er I spent, I spent it in good company.
You were just listening to a recording made in the bleak midwinter of 2020, when producer Jessie Lawson was locked down with two of the people that they love most in the world. One night, they spent an entire evening trying to learn how to sing The Parting Glass, and despite the very depressing circumstances, they say it's a memory of pure joy from that time. And I'm reminded of a quote that I think of often from a Raymond Carver short story called A Small Good Thing. In it, he writes, "Eating is a small good thing in a time like this. These little comforts can nourish us and sustain us enough to get through the darkest of times, and also remind us why it is that we're trying to get through them in the first place." Last comes another investigation, this one made by Stephen Jackson, into a historic teenage wrongdoing which may seem small, but the repercussions of which have reverberated across the years.
To start, could you tell me about your love of Hanson?
I loved that they were homeschooled like me, and they wrote their own songs like me. It's like, I really related to them somehow. I had EPs, I had singles, I had all of their CDs. I built an HTML Flash GeoCities website in Comic Sans called HansonJustIs.com. And then I had a bunch of their posters, and they were plastered lovingly on my walls.
How many posters are we talking?
God, I think like maybe 20.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, I was pretty obsessed.
Jess is my older sister. In the late 90s, in her teeny-bopping prime, Hanson was her world. And because we were a family of 6 living in a 2-bedroom house, Hanson was also everyone's world.
Yeah, it was impossible to live in that house and not be aware of Hanson. We were all aware of Hanson.
That's my little brother Tommy. And here's Nate, the oldest.
They sounded and looked like little girls, and they sang like little angels. I thought they were dumb. I thought Hanson sucked, yeah.
Growing up, we all shared a bedroom. 3 brothers, 1 sister, and a lot of Hanson posters. Nate had his own corner because he was the oldest, Jess had her own corner because she was a girl, and Tommy and I shared a bunk bed in another, so not a lot of privacy. Our solution was to hang up bed sheets around our respective areas. Cordoned off like this, we could each pretend we had our own bedroom. Our dad helped us rig up the curtains. He says Nate started the trend.
Because he became irritable and kind of antisocial, so we put a curtain around his little room so he could keep all of you guys out because...
I think Nate got to that age where he really needed a bedsheet curtain.
Masturbating age?
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no reason. But I was definitely the first one.
Okay, well, let's talk about, the main event.
The grave injustice.
Yes. What do you remember?
Stephen, this day is in the dark recesses of my memory. All I remember is seeing the eyes gouged out of my Hanson posters. It was like vengeful violation, like someone ruined this thing that I loved. I do remember, accusing everyone of doing it, and no one would say that they had done it.
My memory is that everyone thought that I did it.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
So did you guys thought that I did it?
We might still think that you did it.
So you, Stephen, were a beautiful child, and so charming.
This, very obviously, is my mom.
But, there was a big but. I used to quote the nursery rhyme, there was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead, and when she was good, she was very, very good, but when she was bad, she was horrid. And that was you. When you got mad, you were awful. I mean awful.
If you were mad at us, you would go into the room and tear the bed sheets off the bed and tear all the clothes out of the drawers.
Break the light bulb.
That's very vivid for me, and lamps, and then haul the mattress off the bed halfway. So...
Yes, more. Give me more examples, because I've forgotten a lot of these.
You, carved up the piano bench.
No, not the piano bench. The piano.
The piano, and the piano bench.
Different.
I do want to point out that particular act was not out of anger.
Peaceful whittling?
That was just a weird, compulsive, mindless act of destruction.
Oh, yeah.
Same with the little smiley face that I carved into the cupboard in the bathroom.
Wait, I carved the smiley face in the cupboard in the bathroom. I remember it.
You did?
Yeah, I had the toenail clippers, and I made circles with the toenail clippers, and then it looked like I was drawing boobs in the bathroom, so I made it a smiley face so it was less suggestive. I also carved a little bit more on the piano after you had started it, because it just seemed like my only chance to carve on the piano and not have it be a big deal.
Yeah, dude. You're welcome. So at this point, we've established a few facts. 1. In the Jackson household in the 90s, chaos reigned. 2. I was the most destructive and ill-mannered child in the mix. And 3. Memory is a funny thing, and not always to be trusted. Yes, it's a very strong case against me. But I really, not only do I not remember doing it, I remember feeling outraged that everyone thought it was me. And I'm of course everyone would think it was me. I remember, even then, understanding why, but feeling so trapped. I'd framed myself or something.
Do you feel like you were framed?
No. Although, I mean, look, back then I thought it was Nate.
Uh-huh.
But now I think it was maybe me.
Wait, as of this call, or as of...
No, just for the last 10 years.
You just over the last 10 years.
What about your young outrage at being blamed?
I don't know. I mean, I thought I carved the smiley face in the bathroom. I feel like maybe I've revised my memory over all the years. I started working on this story to clear my name. But in the process, faced with an abundance of incriminating character evidence, I've begun to question my own version of what happened. Mostly to make myself feel better, I've been thinking maybe there's more at stake here than who did it. Maybe what's more important is the fact that we're still telling this story, keeping ourselves stuck in the past.
I think it's kind of cool to investigate these family myths, you know?
Yeah.
I called up my mom to see if she was buying it.
Because those old roles, whether it's Jessica as the nurturer or Nate is very private, like whatever those old roles are, it's kind of interesting to go back and poke holes in it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You make assumptions, and then it colors everything that happens after that. So you weren't angry, so you got too angry. I think that once we decided that, then it kept getting reinforced.
Right.
You know, you were always going to be the culprit.
And whether or not I was actually the culprit in this case, maybe the best thing for me to do here is just take the blame, so we can move on. Banish the Hansen gouging to the past where it belongs, and then do it to another story, and another. Until all the old family caricatures fall away, and we can actually see each other for who we are, and for who we've become. Which feels like a reflective, deep enough note to end on, and I really thought about doing that, I really did. Until one night, I got a text from my brother Nate. It reads, "Hey man, if you have time tonight after 10 p.m., we can talk regarding the Hansen eye gouging incident. I'm ready to come forward with the truth."
So can you tell me about the day in question?
Well, actually, before we go any further, I would like to request that you put my voice through one of those voice transformer filters, if you don't mind.
Like they have in documentaries about drug dealers and stuff. You know what I mean? Alright, cool. You know, there's a lot of different accounts of it. Some people say that Tommy did it, but if you think about it, it's impossible, man. He was too short. So I know it wasn't him. I'm pretty sure it wasn't you. So that kind of leaves me. I mean, I'm not saying I did it or I didn't do it. But yeah, I did that. And so what I did is, you know how we had like little thumbtacks to hold everything up? I just grabbed one tack off of the wall and I went up and gouged out their eyes one at a time. Just really quick, just kind of scratched them out. And like, yeah, I don't even know why I did it.
Did you ever think about confessing?
No. Why would I do that?
Is there anything that you would like to say to Jessica?
I'm sorry. And, if I can find that same poster and replace it with the eyes not scratched out with a tack, I would like to do that for you. Hopefully I don't regret this coming forward, but I feel like it's the right thing to do. Yeah, and if you want to talk more, you know, there's other things I can tell you, like crazy things, and you're gonna find out, man. Like the more we talk, you know, the more you're gonna know, you know.
That was made for us by Stephen Jackson, and I am not at all associated with that family, but I felt such deep satisfaction to know that it was Nate who was the culprit. I hope that Stephen is able to find peace now. And as for Nate, I hope you've had a long time to think about your guilt.
Shortcuts is presented by Josie Long. The series producer is Eleanor McDowell. It's a Falling Tree production for BBC Radio 4.
6 Music. Tis the season for a takeover, bringing you good tidings of great joy and plenty of musical gifts.
Hey, it's me, Peaches. It's me, Rebecca, aka Self-Esteem.
Hello, it's me, John Grant.
Hello, my name is Pierre.
6 Music's Festive Takeover.
Your favourite artists are taking over the airwaves with songs old and new to get you in a festive mood.
Spreading seasonal cheer and giving you the perfect present by presents.
And yeah, the rumours are true. I'm going to do an hour of show songs.
Plus, listen back to takeovers of Christmas past from Beastie Boys, Khalees, Robert Plant and Michael Kiwanuka. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Now on Radio 4, Chris Van Tulleken is determined to improve his relationship with his twin brother Zand. Over the next 8 weeks, they'll be asking whether people can change who they are. Today, they're beginning by reflecting on what their dynamic as twins has meant for their development. In episode 1 of a thorough examination with doctors Chris and Zand, Can I Change?
What did people say about which one of us was which? Like, how did people tell the difference between us?
You've always been the funny, easygoing one, and I've always been the intense, serious, anxious one.
But that isn't now. When people at a party are like, so how do I tell the difference between you two? You can't go like, I'm really neurotic and he's got a sense of humour. That's not a very helpful rule of thumb. Like, what do they tell you a joke then? They get you to like...
You'll be like, well, I'm the one at the party and Chris is at home working or something. Zand's my identical twin brother. It's a pretty rare relationship. Only around 4 per 1,000 people are identical twins. And being an identical twin is sometimes one of the best things in my life, but at other times, it's one of the worst. Our disagreements are intense and often really physical. It's a very different relationship to the one we have with our other brother, Jay. He's 2.5 years younger, and he lives in New York.
I was telling someone about how all the banisters in the house are broken because you used to pull me down the stairs and I'd break every banister on the way down.
We never argued that much with Jay. There was just a lot of violence. I don't think we ever seriously injured you particularly. I don't remember that.
The only thing was the dunking in the swimming pool.
Ooh.
I definitely remember, thinking, this is
very fun.
I might drown.
And when we weren't beating Jay up, we simply ignored him.
I definitely wanted to hang out with both of you. I don't know if you remember, but I'd have nightmares and I'd come and sleep in a beanbag at the end of your bed and you guys would wake in the night and kick me out. Yeah. I was very, very jealous that you guys got to share a room. That was the one thing that you guys had that I didn't, that I really wanted.
It actually causes me physical pain to think about this. I find it so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I wince to think about it, like the squandered sort of basically 2 decades of your life that I took no interest in you.
At some point, both mine and Zand's relationship with Jay changed.
I must have been, 16, I guess, and you'd gone to university, and I came up and visited you for the first time, and I was not the younger brother. I was just your brother who'd come up to see you. And we hung out in your room, and it felt so adult. There was this instant transformation.
My relationship with Jay changed, but my relationship with Zand is stuck. We love each other, but we fight nearly constantly. I want to change how I relate to Zand, and I think it's possible. Unfortunately, Zand disagrees.
I feel very pessimistic about anything ever changing because I think the world is the way it is for a reason. Change is extremely difficult because if you want to change anything, you will have to annoy the people who are benefiting from the way things are.
And this pessimism about change is now, ironically, the source of many of our fights. This series is about resolving the argument. This is a thorough examination with Doctors Chris, that's me, and Zand. Series 2, Can I Change? I have a whole self-help industry on my side, promoting the idea that change isn't just possible, it's easy. Because so many of us seem to want to be different in some very fundamental way. For me, it's about having a better relationship with my brother, but I have a nagging feeling that I should and could be a better father, son, husband, doctor, and friend. And that all this will require many different changes. But can any of us change who we really are? Some days change seems possible because, despite our identical genes, Zand and I are very different. Other times, though, we seem so similar, It's as if our fate was handed over in a little package of genetics at conception. For me, the whole idea of change is inextricably linked to my twinness.
They were difficult to tell apart for a long time, and as they got older, one would stop on the stairs, for example, and you would be sort of talking to them, and for a minute you weren't quite sure who it was.
In the dark. And also, even when they're older, if you're anticipating one to arrive at the front door, say, and the other one comes in, and you're not seeing them, then you might say, oh, you might get it wrong, even now.
Raising two identical people wasn't easy. Everyone had an opinion.
Some of the advice was just, you know, they're brothers, they're going to be more or less the same intelligence and interests, etc. And they will do things together, so don't kind of push them apart unnaturally. You know, let them sort of find their own place. And I think that was important.
Our parents never tried to persuade us to be either the same or different. We were allowed to be who we wanted to be.
The morning we took them to the school, they were very excited. And I said, yes, it's so exciting to start a new school. And you're going to be in different classes. I remember one of them said, I don't think I like that. And it did take a few weeks to settle. But that sort of started having different relationships. So you have friends in your own class, you might get asked to a birthday party and your brother isn't asked. They were fine with that.
Yvonne's always been more fun at a party than me, and when we were kids, even into our teens, I would send him to my friends' parties. No one ever noticed. So for me, being a twin is useful, but we're also a golden opportunity for scientists.
I think they're the perfect natural experiment for telling us about how genes and environment shape who we are, our thoughts, feelings, behaviours, and how we end up being each individual person that's not the same as someone else in the world. They're such a powerful design because I know I can't hide my passion.
You're the first person who ever said any aspect of me is well designed. So I'm really
perfectly designed. And your brother.
Dr. Claire Llewellyn is an associate professor at University College London, where she leads a research group as well as the Gemini twin study, one of the largest twin studies ever set up. The very thing about my existence that has me asking all these questions, being a twin, is also the key to unlocking the answers.
They're such a powerful design because identical twins are 100% genetically the same, so they're genetic clones of each other. But non-identical twins are roughly about 50% genetically the same, so they're only half as similar genetically.
Identical twins come from one sperm and one egg, and so they have the same genetic code as each other. Fraternal twins share a birthday, but they come from two sperm and two eggs, so they share only half their DNA, just like normal siblings.
But the key thing, and this is so important, is that both types of twins share their environments to a really, really, really similar extent. So they're both gestated in the same mother for the same period of time. They have the same birthday. They tend to go to the same school. They're of the same sort of social and economic background and ethnicity and so on. So you can kind of assume that any difference between the two types of twins and their similarity can only really be explained by genetic differences between the two types of twins.
In a twin study, you take any characteristic you want, weight, eye colour, personality traits, and so on, and you ask, are identical twins more similar to each other than non-identical twins? If they are, then you know that genes must be involved in determining that characteristic.
So you're probably reasonably similar to Zand in your height. You're not going to be a foot difference in your height.
1 centimetre.
1 centimetre. Whereas you see often quite considerable height differences between siblings. So height is a characteristic that has a strong genetic contribution, but it's not 100% influenced by our genes because there are other factors that are really important too. So that might be things to do with your early childhood diet, things that happen during pregnancy in terms of your nutritional availability. illnesses and things like that. Other things that are kind of a mixture are things like our personality, our political interests, even things like hair colour.
Have twin studies been done on something like political interests?
They have been done on all sorts of things. So I think you would struggle to find a topic on which there hasn't been a twin study. And I think that's probably because they're just so useful in telling us, you know, what the main influences are on these things. And that's important for if you want to try and change these things. So if you find, for example, that something has a very strong genetic component such as height, there's much less room for intervention, or certainly behavioural intervention, than there would be on something like food preferences, for example, that have a really important environmental component as well.
Yes, I would never come to anyone and say, I just want to be a different height, how should I do it? But I might say, look, I'm going to travel in a part of the world and I want to explore new types of food. You know, could I learn to love something?
Yes, and I think you can learn to love something if you're given it enough time.
For almost any human characteristic that's ever been studied, genes play a role, but so does the environment. And that means that, at least in theory, there is the opportunity to change. Very little about us is set in stone at birth.
I think at least with our twins, being different isn't necessarily natural. I think it's one choosing to be different from another.
Mum's never mentioned this before, and it hadn't really occurred to me that Zan and I might be polarising each other, trying to be different people with separate identities.
Christopher learned to play the flute. Zand couldn't seem to find an instrument that suited him, and I said, you know, you can play the flute, Zand. And he said, no, that's Chris's. Even studying, I remember Christopher sitting there working away at something, and I went upstairs to Zand's room, and he seemed to be in a bit of a dream, and I said, Zand, you know, what are you doing or something? Don't you care? I just remember him turning around and saying, of course I care. I'm just not going to be like him.
The decision to define ourselves as different from the other one was a kind of defiance against our genetics.
I mean, they were very funny talking about one another.
Yeah.
He said, Zand is so interesting. He said, he's much more interesting than I am. I said, what do you mean, Chris? And he said, well, you know, he's got a pet tarantula and thing. And I said, well, but you had giant snails. That was pretty interesting. It's not as interesting as the tarantula.
Mum still worries about one of us feeling left out or inferior, but it's never been a concern. I've always been pleased to have an interesting brother. And for the record, Doug, the tarantula, as well as turning out to be a female, was way more interesting than my snails.
Smile, do you have the same dimple as me? I've got a dimple on one side, I don't know which one. I think on the right side I've got a dimple.
I can't smile.
No, come on, think of something nice. No, come on, smile, think of a happy thing.
Is that good?
No, you look like Tony Blair's Christmas card. Come on. There you go, there it is. Yeah, you've got a dimple there. Is that on the same side? No, we've got mirror dimples.
One design that's really cool in twins is to study identical twins who are different on a particular characteristic.
Like me and Zand and our 25 kilo weight difference at one point.
Exactly that.
If identical twins are different in a particular way, like weight for example, it can't be their genetics. And that gives scientists clues about what aspects of the world of each twin might be driving that difference. For example, when Zan went to live in America under stressful circumstances, he put on a lot of weight.
The only thing that can explain a 25 kilo difference between you and Zand at any one time are non-shared environmental influences.
I sometimes feel like my whole life is a sort of weird, badly conducted experiment where, because there are only two of us, we can't really figure out necessarily what the things are, and we can't even necessarily agree on whether we are different, and yet there is this constant tussle between us about whether or not we can become different people. What does this tell us then about whether or not we can change when we're grown-ups?
One thing I find really intriguing is identical twins very, very, very rarely die of the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't. Any difference between you and Zans, there's some environmental cause for that.
Yeah.
And if you do enough studies, you'll find it. You really start to see those differences between identical twins emerge post-puberty during adolescence. You don't see them before. That sort of suggests that it happens once you develop quite a lot of independence and autonomy, and you are really going your separate ways at that point. You know, that makes perfect sense.
I'd always assumed that Zand and I would die at more or less the same time of the same thing. But it turns out the older we get, the influence of the information we are born with diminishes, and my ability to be different to my brother increases right up to and including the moment of my death. It's a weirdly optimistic thought. As we've got older, the similarities between me and Zand have become more intriguing. Our foreheads have sagged, so we both have the same wrinkle over our nose. But our remaining similarities aren't only genetic. We've both chipped our top, front, right incisor, haven't we?
How did you do that?
I don't know, it was just chipped one day.
I brought a beer bottle up to my mouth to drink it too enthusiastic.
I think it was something like that. It was like I hit myself with a spoon in the face. It was like really clumsy. It was something like that.
I was with a girlfriend that I was really in love with, and she was with me, and I busted my tooth, and I thought she'd break up with me because I started crying. Also, I was drunk.
And then she did leave you.
And then she broke up with me, and I still haven't gone to the dentist, and I'm still single.
Claire, do you mind a personal question? Have you ever tried to change something about yourself, or are you trying to change something?
Yes. I am trying to eat more fruit and vegetables every day. I'm quite a fussy eater, and I was a fussy eater as a child.
As well as working out how our environment shapes who we become, Claire Llewellyn is doing a personal experiment about change.
So I'm introducing protocols into my day to remind myself to eat a piece of fruit in the morning and a vegetable snack in the afternoon. And I'm trying to develop a habit to do that. And I'm going to eat them with my toddler, in front of my toddler, to model healthy eating behaviour for her.
To frame this according to what I've just learned from you, you know you have a sort of genetic predisposition to your own eating behaviours, which in your words are a bit fussy.
Yeah.
But by modifying your food environment, by like having some carrots in a bowl in front of you with your toddler, you're going to try and sort of optimize your genetic predisposition so that the low genetic predisposition you have for eating carrots is maximized.
Yes. Exactly, and I am going to give myself a sticker every day.
Claire was surprised at how hard she found it. But over 2 weeks, she has built a habit of one piece of fruit per day. The vegetables proved a bit too much. It surprised me too, and maybe it's a little clue that changing won't be easy. Zan and I may feel like we're living in a badly controlled experiment, but twins who are separated at birth provide a much greater insight into the influence of non-shared environments.
So we both have iPhones, and I was going to use her phone, and she has a passcode, and it just unlocked for me, and I was like, oh my god, like my face works for her Face ID.
Oh, whoa. Really? Zand and I are speaking to 19-year-old identical twins, Mia and Alexandra.
That to me is amazing. Like, that is a proper measure of you being the same.
Does that work both ways, Alexandra? Mia can open yours and...
Try. No, her phone. Oh! It worked!
Mia and Alexandra share their genes, but not their geography.
Right now we are at my parents' home. My parents live in this small village called Sisvik. It's about 100 people that live here, so...
Mia's travelled from California to visit Alexandra in the Norwegian fjords, the first time they've seen each other since the summer of 2018. Mia, how's your Norwegian?
Jeg snakker litt norsk.
Hey, that's
Her
amazing.
pronunciation is so good. I try. Like,
I couldn't tell which one of you initially was Norwegian and American. You both speak in such a similar way.
yeah, her English is so good. Thank you.
Mia and Alexandra spent the first few months of their lives in an orphanage in China, where they weren't acknowledged as sisters and ended up being adopted by different families. But by chance, their adoptive parents happened to meet each other at the orphanage and noticed that their babies looked unusually similar.
I have a photo if you want to see.
Yeah, hold up the photo. The families kept in touch.
Yeah, your mom reached out to my mom. Yeah. I think when we were about 2, they decided to do a DNA test. And then they figured out we were identical twins. And I think that you're not allowed to adopt twins separately, which is why they probably didn't want to say anything.
Mia and Alexandra have been in each other's lives ever since, and like me and Zand, they feel that their identities are somewhat intertwined.
Also, I think we're very similar. Yeah. Just like personality-wise and like mannerisms. I think our temperament is the same. Good and bad. And I guess just the way we react to things.
Do you have things that you'd like to change about yourself and then look at your sister and go, oh, I'm probably fixed this way?
No. No, I don't think so. Sure you don't wish you were taller? Yeah, she's quite a bit taller than me, actually. Yeah.
What's the difference?
I feel like it's maybe like 3 inches.
Like that much? It can't be 3 inches. Stand back to back.
Here, let's stand up.
Oh, yeah, that is a big difference.
It's the Norwegian air.
Claire would love this example. Mia and Alexandra's shared genes give each of them a maximum potential height. But something about growing up in Norway, probably the diet, has allowed Alexandra to get closer to her maximum genetic potential than her twin. And this chimes with the data. On average, Norwegian women are around 5 centimeters taller than American women. Alexandra, are there similar things between you that have surprised you, like just tiny little things that are unusual about either one of you?
Yeah, we don't do it anymore. No, but
What is the thing?
we used to. Oh, I don't know. It was just like when we were young, people said it sounded like that you were doing like opera. Like, oh! No, but it's not like...
That was very beautiful and operatic. And those different cultural environments have changed their approaches to work and play.
I want to either double major or major and minor in psychology and business. And then, I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet. And our school systems are so different, so it's kind of hard to like compare. Yeah. I'll just move to like Italy and work at a grocery store and like enjoy life. It's either one. I mean, like gap years are becoming more common now in the States, but I think just in general, it's like heavily encouraged that you go to high school, straight out of high school, you go to university, and then right after you graduate university, it's like you get a job. And I feel like in Norway, like it's more like we work to live. I think the work-life balance is a lot better here. It's less, definitely much less. So.
Although Zand and I were physically together a lot, we weren't always fully present with each other.
Do you think as kids, like I don't remember feeling like a twin as kids. I don't ever remember thinking, oh, I'm a twin, or like, oh, I'm like you, or I'm not like you.
But I think when we were kids, I almost found spending time with you quite a lonely experience. Because when you're a child, your life's so
boring.
Everything we had done was the same. We were the same household, we ate the same food. So there was no possibility of like, here's my hot new take on the world. It's just like, oh, there's a guy who I know is going to think the same thing that I do. Almost to the point of like, and I think this is probably true, I never needed to really open my mouth to have a discussion with you because it was all sort of pre-understood. Whereas once you become grown-ups and you have different experiences, then suddenly I have this ambassador for myself wandering through the world, sending reports back to headquarters, which is me. Like, you're just this other bit of me that
like
goes...
an avatar.
Yeah, you go and have these experiences for me and then report back. You're like, oh, Chris, this is how you'd feel if you'd been to this place, and that's really intriguing for me. And now I don't need to go because you went.
I find what you're saying really boring because it's what I think.
Is that really true? I don't know. I feel like this is a really original thought. Is that what you think?
You think it's original, but I've thought it before.
Well, ages ago.
I think oftentimes with twins, it's always, it's always the twins, or me and Alexandra, they don't get to be their own people. And I think that one benefit of us being separate is we have our own identities without being attached to the other as much as if we had grown up together. I think we've got to find our own hobbies separately. Like, we weren't forced into doing the same thing. And then we also weren't compared academically in school or like athletically if we did sports together. So I think that's a big plus to being raised separately.
You, in a sense, are the ultimate experiment to see if genes or upbringing, nurture or nature is more important. What do you feel you've learned about yourselves from living inside that experiment?
Maybe that your genes has more to say than like the environment you grow up in. But I feel like that might be because our families are not too different either.
That's what I said.
Because they get along so well, and yeah, I feel like our moms are similar. Yeah, so our dads. They call each other for sisters, so yeah, we're just one big family.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Your mothers, who are not relations at all, obviously, call each other sisters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Whether you know a twin or you are a twin, it can feel like genes are destiny. But we know now it's more complicated than that. We're not born blank slates, but we're not just running genetic programs either. During this series, I'll be talking to the leading experts in the world about the forces that shape who we become. Is it nature or nurture? Or is that even the right question?
Not at all, not at all, not at all. It's the wrong question. They are so intertwined that it's just plain impossible. Every second is both genetically and environmentally expressed.
You've been listening to a thorough examination with Drs. Chris and Zand. Can I Change? The producers are Hester Kant and Alexandra Quinn. The series editor is Joe Roundtree. It's a Van Tulleken Brothers and Loftus Media production for BBC Radio 4. I remember noticing, it was about 10 years ago, is that you had this hair growing out of the top of your ear. And I remember I just pulled it out in a filming break. Just I forgot that there was a thing attached. It's not yours. Or maybe I thought it was like a hair from your head that falls on your ear. And you got very upset. And then
It's horrible for a hair doinked out of you when you're not expecting it.
It was a weird thing to do. But then you pointed out that I had exactly the same hair.
You have a single white hair in your eyebrow, which I don't have.
But that's just today. That's not a regular feature. It's just a new thing.
Can I get it? Hold still. Hold still. This is playback. There you go. Hold still.
Oh! Yes! Oh! The series continues at the same time next week when Chris and Zand will be taking a personality test to find out whether birth order has any effect on personality. And worth knowing too that all episodes of the series are available now on BBC Sounds. Next this afternoon on Radio 4, a portrait of the life, popular art and remarkable engineering of Carter's Steam Fair, a vintage fun fair which toured the country from 1977 until the end of October this year. But before that, are you ready for some revelations?
The Confessional with me, Stephen Mangan.
Where on earth did you find that?
Listen, we do our research.
Mortifying.
The series I invite my guests to share their guilty secrets.
Obviously something in my tiny 4-year-old brain thought, maybe there's a way I can get out of this.
I've never worked in theatre again.
Well, you think
Never.
the words got out?
I think I've been blacklisted.
I should have grown up a bit more than that, shouldn't I?
Join me, Stephen Mangan, for The Confessional on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. You flat out lied.
Absolutely.
Starting with The Confession of Jessie Cave next Sunday night at 7:15.
BBC News at 4 o'clock.
Ambulance staff across England and Wales are to go on strike on the 21st of December. 3 unions are organising the walkouts, which they say will not affect calls where someone's life is in danger. More than 10,000 members of the GMB union will also strike on the 28th of December in a row over pay. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says his door is open to meet unions, but his Labour shadow, Wes Streeting, told the House of Commons that the government should get directly involved.
Why is the government not even trying to stop the strikes going ahead in the NHS? Surely when the NHS is already lacking the staff it needs to treat patients on time, the government ought to be pulling out all the stops, getting around the table and negotiating to stop industrial action. So why aren't they?
Talks are taking place between the RMT union and the group representing train companies about rail strikes in the coming days. More walkouts are planned between Christmas Eve and the 27th of December, on top of 4 days next week, in a row over pay and conditions. 9 children across the UK are now known to have died from an illness linked to the bacterial infection Strep A. The latest death is a 5-year-old girl from Belfast who's been named as Stella Lily McCongan-Dale. Her schools described her as a bright and talented little girl. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country is switching to emergency shutdowns to stabilize its power grid. About half of the Kyiv region will be without electricity in the next few days. It follows a wave of Russian attacks yesterday which killed 4 people. A man in his 20s has been arrested after reports that an egg was thrown at King Charles. It happened while the king was on a visit to Luton Town Hall this afternoon. Official figures show the number of people smoking in the UK has dropped to its lowest level on record. The Office for National Statistics says 13% of adults smoked cigarettes in 2021. That's down from 14% the previous year. BBC News.
In half an hour, Matthew Paris will be back with a new series of Great Lives. In this opening episode, the cookbook author Olia Hercules will be telling us why she's picked the Ukrainian artist and activist Alla Horska as her great life. Alla was part of the Ukrainian dissident movement known as the 60ers. Writers, artists and cultural figures who stood against the destruction of Ukrainian identity and rallied for greater freedoms in the late 1950s and the 1960s. That's the new series of Great Lives at 4:30. But now on Radio 4 to a story which began in the 70s, 1976 to be precise. That was the year John Carter fell in love with a magnificent but decrepit fairground roundabout. In 1977, his family began travelling with the extraordinary vintage fun fair he founded. John Carter died in the year 2000, but his wife, children and friends carried on until their final tour this year. Yes, the fair steamed up for the last time on the 30th of October. And now on Radio 4 we are marking the end of this era with a programme first broadcast in 2011 in which they describe their labour of love, art and mechanics.
We started up Carter's in quite a small way. We never intended to have a travelling fair. We used to organise shows and rallies, air shows and military vehicle rallies and collectors' bazaars. We needed to get income on the fair, so we invited showmen to come with their funfair rides. And the iconic ride is always the galloping horses, or carousels, many people still call them. And we found several times we were let down by the showmen because they got a better offer. So we decided we'd buy our own carousel, galloper.